Florence, the name itself breathes history. But what if the lavish palaces and glittering art collections of the Medici family were just a facade? What if their true power, their secret philosophies, their very souls were hidden not in grand cathedrals, but in the earth itself, sculpted into breathtaking, enigmatic gardens? These aren't just pretty parks. They are outdoor theaters of cosmic ambition, intricate puzzles of power, and whispered secrets from a time when a single family ruled not just a city, but the very ideas of an era. Get ready to peel back the layers of earth and stone, because the stories these 9 gardens tell are more shocking than you could ever imagine. Number 1, Boboli Gardens. Behind the colossal Pitti Palace in Florence, the Boboli Gardens sprawl across a vast hillside. This monumental green space was not merely a pleasure ground, it was a carefully constructed allegorical landscape, a grand stage for the Medici's imperial aspirations. Begun by Cosimo I de' Medici and his wife Eleonora di Toledo in the mid-16th century, these gardens evolved over centuries, becoming a testament to Medici wealth, power, and sophisticated symbolic language. The Boboli Gardens represented the cosmic order under Medici control, a world where nature itself submitted to their design and expressed their divine right to rule. The layout of Boboli Gardens is a masterclass in Renaissance garden design, featuring broad avenues, intricate grottos, monumental fountains, and countless classical statues. One of the most striking features is the amphitheater, a semicircular lawn inspired by ancient Roman circuses. Here, elaborate court spectacles, plays, and even mock naval battles were staged. The amphitheater structure, echoing classical antiquity, immediately elevated the Medici to the status of Roman emperors, subtly suggesting their reign was a continuation of ancient imperial glory. This was a powerful visual declaration of their ambition. At the very top of the amphitheater sits the colossal Neptune fountain, often called the Fountain of the Fork due to Neptune's trident. This massive statue of the sea god, sculpted by Stoldo Lorenzi, depicts Neptune emerging from a pool, commanding the waters. Neptune, master of the seas, represented dominion and control, particularly crucial for a family like the Medici, who sought to expand their influence through trade and maritime power. The fountain's placement at the highest point of the gardens, overlooking the entire expanse, positioned the Medici as masters of both land and sea, rulers of all they surveyed. The water itself, flowing through complex hydraulic systems, symbolized the lifeblood and wealth controlled by the ducal family. A short distance from the Neptune fountain lies the famous grotto of Buontalenti, or the Grotta Grande. This 3-chambered grotto, built by Bernardo Buontalenti, is an astonishing example of Mannerist artistry. Its exterior appears rustic and natural, but the interior reveals incredible artifice. The first chamber once housed Michelangelo's Prisoner's sculptures, later moved to the Accademia Gallery. These unfinished figures, appearing to struggle to escape the stone, were thought to symbolize the struggle of the soul to break free from the material world, a common Neoplatonic theme favored by the Medici. The grotto's walls are covered in artificial stalactites, sponges, and pumice, creating an otherworldly organic feel. The grotto's second chamber features a magnificent marble group of Paris and Helen by Vincenzo de Rossi, while the third chamber, the grotto's true heart, contains Giambologna's Fountain of Venus. The statue of Venus, rising from a pool, surrounded by carved animals and fantastic creatures, was not just an ode to beauty. Venus, goddess of love and fertility, also had strong associations with cosmic harmony and the generative power of nature. Her presence in the deepest part of the grotto, a place of transformation and primordial forces, suggested the Medici's ability to harness and direct these fundamental energies. The grotto itself, a dark, moist, cave-like space leading to light and art, represented a journey of initiation, a philosophical path from chaos to order, from raw nature to refined art, all under the guiding hand of the Medici. Further into the Boboli Gardens, one finds the Isolotto, a large artificial island in the center of a rectangular pond. Adorned with citrus trees, statues, and a central fountain of Oceanus sculpted by Giambologna, the Isolotto functions as a garden within a garden. Oceanus, a Titan deity of the world-encircling river, presided over this miniature world. Statues of Perseus and Andromeda, as well as mythological creatures like hippocampi, populated the water. The Isolado, a perfected enclosed natural space, reflected the Medici's desire to create a self-contained ideal world, a microcosm of their well-ordered and prosperous duchy. The mythological figures, often depicting themes of rescue, triumph, and transformation, reinforced the narrative of Medici's strength and justice. The vast scale of the Boboli Gardens, stretching over 45 hectares, allowed for diverse symbolic zones. The Via Tolone along Cypress-lined avenue served as a processional path, directing the eye and body towards specific vistas and symbolic endpoints. This linear progression was not merely aesthetic, it guided the visitor through a narrative crafted by the Medici. Along this path, and others, numerous ancient Roman statues and Renaissance copies were placed. These classical figures were not just decorative, they imbued the gardens with the gravitas of antiquity and directly linked the Medici to the legacy of ancient Rome, a common strategy for validating their authority. Another remarkable feature is the Cafe House, a delightful Rococo structure at the highest point of the gardens, offering panoramic views of Florence. Though built later, it exemplifies the ongoing use of the gardens for display and pleasure. Even the choice of plants held meaning. Citrus trees, abundant in Boboli, were a symbol of fertility, prosperity, and the Medici's success in agricultural endeavors. The careful cultivation of these non-native plants demonstrated the Medici's power to bend nature to their will, creating a luxurious and exotic environment in the heart of Tuscany. The Boboli Gardens, from its grand axes to its intimate grottos, functioned as a living allegory. Every fountain, every statue, every carefully chosen plant was a piece of a larger puzzle, communicating complex messages about Medici power, their connection to classical heritage, their philosophical leanings towards Neoplatonism, and their vision for a perfectly ordered state. It was a garden that demanded active interpretation, subtly impressing upon all who entered the absolute and divinely sanctioned authority of the Grand Dukes of Tuscany. Number 2. Villa di Castello. Just north of Florence lies the Villa di Castello, a garden that represents one of the earliest and most elaborate statements of Medici power and philosophical thought in a garden setting. Commissioned by Cosimo I di Medici in the mid-16th century and designed primarily by Niccolò Tribolo, this garden became a crucible for ideas about cosmic order, elemental balance, and the divine right of the ruler. It predates many elements of Boboli, laying the groundwork for the grand allegories that would define Medici garden design. Villa di Castello was not just a beautiful space, it was a complex philosophical treatise rendered in living form. The garden is organized on an axial plan, with a central path leading through distinct sections, each designed to evoke specific symbolic meanings. The formal parterres, filled with geometric patterns and medicinal herbs, were not just for show. They reflected the Renaissance belief in a rational, ordered cosmos, a reflection of divine intelligence. The intricate knots and patterns of the flower beds were understood to represent the underlying mathematical harmony of the universe, a harmony that Cosimo I, as ruler, was destined to maintain. This section of the garden provided a sense of clarity and intellectual control. At the beginning of the central axis, one encountered the famous Fountain of Hercules and Antaeus, sculpted by Bartolomeo Ammanati. This monumental group depicts Hercules, the divine hero, triumphing over Antaeus, a giant who drew strength from the earth. Hercules, in this context, was a direct allegory for Cosimo I himself, representing his strength, virtue, and his ability to overcome challenges and restore order to the Florentine state. Antaeus, on the other hand, symbolized the forces of chaos and rebellion that Cosimo had suppressed. The fountain's jets of water, powerful and controlled, visually reinforced the triumph of order over disorder, a central theme of Cosimo's reign. The water was drawn from the nearby Monte Morello, a feat of engineering that itself symbolized man's mastery over nature. Moving further into the garden, one discovers a series of fountains and grottos, each carefully imbued with meaning. The Fountain of Florence, or the Fountain of Venus, was another key feature, originally intended for the main axis. This fountain depicted the goddess Venus wringing water from her hair, symbolizing the life-giving essence of water and the fertility of Tuscany under Medici rule. Venus also represented beauty, love, and the harmonious integration of humanity with nature, a core tenet of Renaissance humanism. The water flowing from her hair was understood to signify the prosperity and abundance that flowed from Cosimo's governance. The most celebrated and enigmatic feature of the Villa di Castello Gardens is the Grotto of the Animals, also known as the Grotto of the Flood, designed by Tribolo and completed by Amonati and Buontalenti. This incredible space is a multi-chambered grotto simulating a natural cave but filled with astonishing artifice. The walls are encrusted with shells, pumice, and mosaic work, creating a vibrant, living texture. Within the grotto, life-sized marble and bronze statues of various animals, birds, and even mythical creatures populate the space, some of which were designed to spout water, creating sound effects that mimicked animal noises. The Grotto of the Animals was a microcosm of the natural world, a controlled wilderness. The animals, both real and fantastic, represented the diversity of creation, all brought together in a single, immersive environment. The hidden meaning here was complex. It was a representation of primeval chaos and raw nature, but one that was ultimately contained and controlled by the Medici. The sound of water, sometimes gentle like rain, sometimes roaring like a flood, added to the sensory experience, emphasizing the elemental forces at play. This grotto served as a subtle reminder of the Medici's ability to tame the wild, both literally in their gardens and metaphorically in their political domain. It was a place where the wildness of creation met the ordered hand of human design. Beyond the formal gardens, Castello also featured a large bosco or woodland, a more naturalistic area for hunting and leisure. Even this wilder space was carefully managed, reflecting the Medici's mastery over all aspects of their dominion. The gardens contained an impressive collection of citrus trees, often grown in large terracotta pots, which could be moved indoors during winter. These citrus fruits, especially the rare and exotic varieties, were symbols of fertility, prosperity, and the Medici's exotic tastes and connections to distant lands. The cultivation of these delicate plants in the Florentine climate was a testament to their horticultural prowess and their ability to defy natural limitations. A particular emphasis in Castello was placed on hydraulic marvels. Elaborate water tricks and automata were integrated throughout the garden. Hidden jets of water would suddenly spray unsuspecting visitors, creating an element of playful surprise. These water games were not just for amusement. They demonstrated the Medici's advanced engineering capabilities and their command over natural forces. The sudden appearance of water, seemingly from nowhere, could also be interpreted as a divine manifestation, a reminder of the Medici's almost magical ability to control their environment. These were the earliest forms of complex automata, enchanting and bewildering, suggesting the Medici's ability to create wonders. The Villa di Castello garden, therefore, served multiple purposes. It was a place of beauty and relaxation, certainly, but more deeply, it was a profound statement of philosophical belief. The progression from the orderly parterres to the wild, yet controlled grotto, and the allegories of Hercules and Venus communicated the Medici's vision of themselves as enlightened rulers, capable of bringing harmony and order to the world, mastering both nature and human society. It was a garden where the elemental forces of the cosmos were brought into balance, a perfect reflection of the Medici's ideal state. This garden was an outdoor classroom of power and philosophy, educating all who entered on the true nature of Medici rule. Number 3, Villa La Petraia. Perched high above Florence, offering breathtaking panoramic views, stands the Villa La Petraia, another magnificent Medici residence with a garden steeped in history and subtle meaning. Originally a medieval fortress, it was transformed into a sumptuous villa and garden by Cardinal Ferdinando de' Medici, who would later become Grand Duke Ferdinando I in the late 16th century. La Petraia, meaning sunny place, belied its name, becoming a verdant oasis carefully designed to celebrate beauty, control over nature, and the glory of the Medici dynasty. Its terraces and layout spoke volumes about the family's desire for a picturesque yet potent landscape. The garden of Villa La Petraia is characterized by its tiered structure, adapting to the natural slope of the hill. 3 main terraces descend from the villa, each offering different views and distinct symbolic zones. The top terrace, directly adjacent to the villa, was the most formal, featuring geometrically arranged parterres and fountains. This immediate area provided a sense of refined order and elegance, a polished extension of the ducal residence itself. Here, delicate flowers and sculpted hedges demonstrated the meticulous care and control exerted by the Medici over their environment. A prominent feature on this upper terrace is the Fountain of Florence, or Venus of the Garden, a beautiful bronze sculpture by Giambologna. This statue, originally intended for the Villa di Castello, depicts Venus wringing water from her hair, surrounded by marine creatures. Like its counterpart at Castello, this Venus embodied the fertility of the land and the prosperity brought by Medici rule. Her presence on the highest terrace, overlooking the valley, symbolized the benevolent gaze of the Medici upon their dominion, showering it with life-giving abundance. The water flowing from her hair was a visual metaphor for the blessings that emanated from the ruling family. The middle terrace of La Petraia is a large, open space, often used for games and spectacles. This expansive lawn provided a transition from the formal elegance of the upper level to the more naturalistic elements further down. Its openness offered unobstructed views of the surrounding Tuscan landscape, emphasizing the Medici's connection to their territory and their appreciation for the natural beauty of their domain. This area, while seemingly simple, allowed for a broader perspective, connecting the villa's private realm to the wider world outside. The lowest terrace is arguably the most intriguing, with its shady groves and more rustic elements. Here one could find groves of trees, pathways, and perhaps more intimate grottos. This section offered a cooler, more secluded retreat, contrasting with the formality above. The transition from formal to rustic mirrored a philosophical journey from the refined order of human civilization to the refreshing wildness of nature. This balance between artifice and nature was a recurring theme in Renaissance gardens, suggesting a harmonious relationship between man and the cosmos, achieved through careful design. One of the hidden gems of La Petraia is the grotto fountain known as the Cave of the Drago. This small, enchanting grotto, often featuring a dragon spitting water, evoked mythical creatures and the untamed aspects of nature. Dragons in Renaissance symbolism were complex, often representing both chaos and guardian spirits. Here, the dragon, controlled and made to serve as a fountain, symbolized the Medici's mastery over even the most powerful and potentially destructive forces of nature. The water, channeled through the beast, became a controlled and beautiful display, a testament to the family's power to transform wildness into art. The careful cultivation of specific plant species also contributed to the garden's hidden meanings. As with other Medici gardens, citrus trees were a common sight, symbolizing prosperity, fertility, and the family's horticultural skill. Exotic plants, too, were sometimes introduced, showcasing the Medici's global reach and their ability to bring wonders from distant lands into their immediate environment. The precise geometric layouts of the parterres were further enhanced by statuary depicting classical figures, nymphs, and gods. These statues were not merely decorative. They populated the garden with allegorical figures, transforming the space into a living mythological landscape. These figures often held specific attributes or were placed in positions that reinforced themes of harmony, fertility, and divine favor. The very choice of La Petraia as a villa for enhancement by Ferdinando I was significant. Ferdinando was a savvy ruler, consolidating Medici power and expanding Florentine influence. His extensive work on the garden, investing heavily in its design and beautification, was a public declaration of his secure rule and his commitment to the arts and grand projects. The views from La Petraia, encompassing much of the Arno Valley and the city of Florence, subtly positioned the Medici as masters of this entire panorama, their influence stretching as far as the eye could see. La Petraia, therefore, functioned as a testament to the Medici's transformation of both land and power. From a simple, stony place, it became a sculpted masterpiece, a garden that combined formal elegance with natural beauty. It expressed Ferdinando I's vision of a prosperous and well-ordered duchy, where art and nature lived in perfect harmony under the benevolent and controlling gaze of the Medici. It was a picturesque setting, but one imbued with deep layers of symbolic meaning, silently affirming the family's enduring legacy and their connection to both the divine and the natural world. Number 4. Villa di Poggio e Caiano. The Villa di Poggio e Caiano, located in the Tuscan countryside outside Prato, offers a different glimpse into Medici garden philosophy. Commissioned by Lorenzo the Magnificent in the late 15th century and designed by Giuliano da Sangallo, this villa and its surrounding landscape represented a conscious shift towards a more Arcadian ideal, a celebration of country life and a return to nature. While less overtly symbolic than the grand gardens of Boboli or Castello, Poggio, a Caiano's simplicity and harmony held its own profound meanings, reflecting Lorenzo's intellectual leanings and his vision of a more refined humanist existence. Unlike the terraced extravaganzas of other Medici villas, Poggio a Caiano is set on a gently sloping plain, emphasizing its connection to the agricultural landscape. The garden here is more integrated with the surrounding fields and woods, blurring the lines between cultivated space and wild nature. This design choice reflected the humanist ideal of villeggiatura, the enjoyment of country life, intellectual pursuits, and a retreat from the bustling city. It was a place for contemplation, poetry, and scholarly discussions rather than overt displays of power. The garden features a long, straight avenue leading up to the villa, flanked by rows of trees. This grand approach provided a sense of formality and a gradual revelation of the villa's elegant facade. The axis, while simple, still guided the visitor's eye, drawing them towards the architectural masterpiece that was the villa itself. This alignment hinted at a rational, ordered approach to both nature and life, characteristic of the early Renaissance. A prominent feature of the Poggio, a Caiano garden, is its large, rectangular fish pond. This pond served both practical and aesthetic purposes. It provided fresh fish for the villa's inhabitants, but more importantly, it reflected the sky and surrounding greenery, creating a serene and expansive visual effect. Water, even in this simpler form, remained a symbol of life, purity, and tranquility. The calm surface of the pond, reflecting the world, could be seen as an invitation to introspection and philosophical reflection. The immediate surroundings of the villa were often laid out with formal parterres, though less elaborate than those at Castello. These geometrically arranged flower beds, often filled with fragrant herbs and flowers, provided a sense of order and controlled beauty right outside the villa's doors. They were a testament to careful cultivation and a celebration of botanical diversity, albeit on a smaller, more intimate scale. Even these contained spaces offered a quiet visual harmony. One of the most significant symbolic elements of Poggio a Caiano was its connection to the Golden Age. Lorenzo the Magnificent, a keen patron of Neoplatonic philosophy, sought to create a terrestrial paradise, an idyllic setting reminiscent of a mythical Golden Age where humanity lived in harmony with nature. The villa's architecture, particularly the grand hall adorned with frescoes depicting the story of Hercules and other classical myths, extended this theme into the interior. The frescoes often depicted themes of virtuous rule and the re-establishment of a golden age under Medici leadership. The choice of plants and trees in the garden also played a subtle role. While not as explicitly symbolic as the grottos of other villas, the presence of fruit trees, vineyards, and agricultural fields emphasized the villa's productive nature and its connection to the bounty of the Tuscan land. These were not just decorative plants, they were sources of sustenance and wealth, grounding the Medici in the reality of their agricultural dominion. The overall feeling was one of natural abundance and a cultivated simplicity. The garden's relative lack of overtly grand fountains or complex automata, compared to later Medici creations, underscored its primary purpose as a retreat for intellectual and leisurely pursuits. It was a place where Lorenzo could entertain poets, philosophers, and artists, fostering an environment of cultural and intellectual exchange. The landscape was designed to inspire contemplation, to invite a connection with the natural world, and to facilitate learned discussions rather than overwhelm with displays of power. The Poggio, a Caiano, also held a more somber, private meaning for the Medici. It was here that many important family events took place, including tragic ones. The villa served as a private sanctuary, a place where the human side of the powerful Medici family could be more visible. The garden, with its naturalistic charm, provided a comforting backdrop for both joyous celebrations and periods of mourning, connecting the family's personal narrative to the unchanging rhythms of nature. In essence, the Villa di Poggio, a Caiano garden, represented a different facet of Medici power, not just the power of conquest and dominion, but the power of culture, intellect, and refined living. It was a landscape designed to foster harmony, inspire thought, and embody the humanist ideals of a cultivated life. Its beauty lay in its elegant simplicity and its seamless integration with the Tuscan countryside, silently conveying Lorenzo the Magnificent's vision of a peaceful and prosperous golden age under his enlightened rule. Number 5, Villa di Artimino La Ferdinanda. High in the hills of Monte Albano, the Villa di Artimino, affectionately known as La Ferdinanda, or the Villa of the Hundred Chimneys, stands as a monumental testament to the ambition and grandeur of Grand Duke Ferdinando I de' Medici. Built by Bernardo Buontalenti in the late 16th century, this villa and its surrounding estate were conceived primarily as a grand hunting lodge, a place for recreation and display, but its vast grounds and architectural presence held deeper, more commanding meanings, embodying the Medici's dominion over nature and their control of a sprawling territory. The design of the Villa di Artimino departs from earlier Medici villas. Its austere, almost fortress-like exterior, softened by numerous whimsical chimneys that give it its nickname, suggests a different kind of power. The surrounding landscape, rather than being overtly formal, was largely devoted to a vast hunting reserve. This choice immediately signaled the villa's primary function, a place for the noble sport of hunting, a pursuit that symbolized man's mastery over the wild and the ruler's ability to control and tame even the most formidable creatures. The garden areas immediately surrounding the villa were more restrained than those at Boboli or Castello. They featured formal parterres and terraced lawns that provided a manicured transition from the grand architecture to the wilder hunting grounds beyond. These structured elements offered a controlled environment for leisure and conversation, a stark contrast to the untamed nature it bordered. The formal sections often contained strategically placed statues of mythological hunters or animals, reinforcing the theme of the chase and the triumph of human skill. Artimino's grounds were not just for hunting, they were a meticulously managed ecosystem. The extensive woods and fields were carefully cultivated to support game animals, ensuring a plentiful supply for ducal hunts. The sophisticated management of natural resources demonstrated the Medici's foresight and their scientific approach to land use. It was a practical expression of their control over the environment, not just in terms of aesthetics, but in terms of sustained productivity and privilege. The abundant wildlife on the estate was a living symbol of Medici wealth and their ability to command vast resources. While large, elaborate fountains were not the primary focus here, water features were still present, often in the form of smaller, rustic fountains or natural springs channeled into pools. These elements provided refreshment and a soothing sound, blending seamlessly with the natural surroundings. Even in its more rustic setting, water remained a vital element, symbolizing life and purity, managed and directed by the ducal hand. One of the subtle yet profound meanings of Artimino lay in its elevated position and commanding views. From the villa, Ferdinando I could survey vast expanses of his duchy. This panoramic vista was a constant visual reminder of his territorial control and his overarching authority. The act of looking out from the villa, seeing his land stretch endlessly, reinforced his image as the supreme ruler, overseeing all aspects of his domain. The villa became a watchtower of power, both literal and symbolic. The villa also housed a celebrated art collection, including works by contemporary artists and classical antiquities. These pieces, displayed within the hunting lodge, provided a cultural overlay to the aristocratic pursuit of the hunt. They served as a reminder that even in their leisure, the Medici were patrons of the arts, combining the physical vigor of the hunt with the intellectual refinement of collecting and appreciating beauty. The display of art in this semi-private setting reinforced the Medici's cultivated image. The sheer scale of the Artemino estate, encompassing thousands of acres, was a direct testament to Ferdinando I's immense wealth and power. It was a space designed for grand entertainments, for hosting foreign dignitaries, and for demonstrating the luxurious lifestyle of the Grand Duke. The grand hunts themselves were elaborate spectacles, choreographed events that showcased Medici organization, their vast retinue, and their prowess, both in sport and in governance. The successful capture of game was a metaphor for the successful capture of political objectives. In many ways, Villa di Artemino represented the practical and territorial aspect of Medici power. It was less about subtle philosophical allegories and more about a direct, undeniable statement of dominion over nature and land. It showed the Grand Duke as master of his environment, a powerful figure who commanded both the wild beasts of the forest and the vast resources of his state. The numerous chimneys, each a point reaching towards the sky, could even be seen as silent declarations of the Medici reach, permeating every corner of their realm. Artemino was a powerful declaration of presence and control, a physical embodiment of the Medici's vast and secure domain. Number 6. Villa di Cerreto Guidi. Another hunting lodge in the vast Medici network of villas, the Villa di Cerreto Guidi, situated near the marshlands of Fucecchio, offers a unique perspective on Medici power and their relationship with the natural world. Built for Cosimo, the first de' Medici in the mid-16th century, and designed by Buontalenti, this villa is less about grand symbolic allegories in its garden, and more about direct control, utility, and the display of practical dominion over a specific, often challenging landscape. Its unique double-ramp staircase, a hallmark of Buontalenti's genius, dominates the visual landscape and hints at its distinctive purpose. Cerreto Guidi's location was strategic, chosen for its proximity to the vast marshlands, a prime hunting ground for waterfowl and other game. Unlike the manicured beauty of other Medici gardens, the immediate surroundings of Cerreto Guidi were more utilitarian, reflecting its primary function as a hunting retreat and a base for managing the surrounding territory. The landscape was less about aesthetic symbolism and more about raw, controlled nature. The gardens that did exist at Cerreto Guidi were typically simpler, consisting of formal parterres directly adjacent to the villa, providing a neat transition from the grand architecture to the wilder environment. These contained spaces, often with geometric hedges and perhaps a modest fountain, offered a place for formal promenade or quiet conversation before or after the hunt. They represented a small pocket of human order imposed upon the wilderness, a controlled space for the nobility to relax. The most striking feature of the villa itself, and by extension its influence on the surrounding area, is the monumental double-ramp staircase that embraces the villa's facade. This architectural marvel, resembling a grand embrace, provides access to the main floor. Its theatrical design, while not a garden element in itself, dictated the immediate perception of the villa's setting. It symbolized the grandeur and accessibility of Medici power, even in a more remote and functional setting. The ramps, leading upwards in a sweeping gesture, could be seen as an ascent to a place of privilege and command. The true garden of Cerreto Guidi was the surrounding territory, the extensive forests, the marshes, and the managed hunting preserves. This was where the Medici exercised their ultimate control over nature. The marshes of Fucecchio, a challenging environment to manage, became a testament to Medici engineering and their ability to reclaim and utilize wild lands. With drainage projects and careful management of waterways transformed what was once untamed wilderness into a productive hunting ground, demonstrating their mastery over even the most stubborn natural forces. This was not just about recreation, it was about territorial control and resource management. Hunting, the primary activity at Cerreto Guidi, was not just a sport for the Medici. It was a highly ritualized activity that reinforced social hierarchy and demonstrated princely virtues. The successful hunt symbolized the ruler's prowess, his strength, and his ability to subdue and control. The animals themselves, once majestic and wild, were brought under human dominion. This metaphorical control extended to the state just as the ruler controlled the wild animals. He controlled the unruly elements of his populace. The logistical organization required for a grand ducal hunt at Cerreto Guidi was immense, involving numerous servants, hunters, and extensive preparations. This infrastructure itself was a display of Medici wealth and their administrative capabilities. The villa became a hub for this vast enterprise, a point of command and control over a significant natural resource. The very act of hosting these hunts for foreign dignitaries also served as a diplomatic tool, showcasing Medici hospitality and their abundant resources. While perhaps lacking the overt mythological allegories of Boboli or Castello, Cerreto Guidi embodied a more visceral aspect of Medici power, their practical authority over land, resources, and the wild. It was a place where their dominion was exercised not just through symbolic statuary, but through actual deeds, the taming of marshes, the management of forests, and the successful pursuit of game. The villa stood as a stark reminder that Medici power extended beyond the refined elegance of city palaces. It reached into the depths of the Tuscan countryside, shaping and controlling even the most untamed corners of their duchy. It was a direct, unambiguous statement of power rooted in the land itself. Number 7, Villa Medici di Fiesole. Perched dramatically on the slopes of Fiesole, overlooking the city of Florence, the Villa Medici di Fiesole is one of the oldest and most significant Medici villas, a true gem of early Renaissance garden design. Commissioned by Giovanni de' Medici, Cosimo the Elder's younger brother, in the mid-15th century, and designed by Michelozzo, this villa and its gardens represented a groundbreaking approach to integrating architecture with the natural landscape. It was a place of intellectual retreat, contemplation, and a subtle yet profound celebration of humanism and the beauty of the natural world. Unlike the later, more expansive Medici gardens, Fiesole's garden is compact and intimate, largely defined by the steep incline of the hillside. Michelozzo's genius lay in his ability to create terraced gardens that not only mitigated the slope, but transformed it into a series of distinct contemplative spaces. These terraces, supported by retaining walls, provided flat areas for parterres and pathways, allowing for leisurely strolls and quiet reflection. The very act of shaping the difficult terrain was a statement of human ingenuity and control over nature, even in this early period. The most striking feature of the Villa Medici di Fiesole is its panoramic view of Florence and the Arno Valley. The villa and its gardens are oriented to maximize this breathtaking vista. This visual connection to the city below was not merely aesthetic. It subtly linked the villa's intellectual pursuits to the urban heart of Medici power. From this elevated position, the Medici could survey their dominion, reinforcing their role as the city's protectors and patrons, connecting their private contemplation to their public responsibility. The view itself was a powerful symbol of their encompassing authority. The garden's layout emphasizes axial lines and orderly geometric forms, reflecting the Renaissance ideal of rationality and harmony. Formal parterres, often planted with fragrant herbs and flowers, created a sense of controlled beauty and intellectual order. These patterns, though simple, represented the underlying mathematical harmony of the universe, a concept central to Neoplatonic thought, which flourished under Medici patronage. The scent of the herbs and flowers added a sensory dimension to the contemplative experience. The water features at Fiesole were more restrained, often appearing as simple fountains or tranquil pools. These elements provided soothing sounds and visual focal points, encouraging quiet reflection. The water, in this context, symbolized purity, life, and the flow of intellectual thought. The sound of trickling water would have created a serene atmosphere conducive to study and philosophical discussion, which were common activities at the villa. The garden's emphasis on simple, natural elements, rather than elaborate grottos or massive sculptures, reflects a more humanist approach. It was a space designed to connect with nature, to find inspiration in its beauty, and to foster intellectual pursuits. This focus on natural harmony was in line with the early Renaissance ideal of odium, the dignified leisure for intellectual and artistic activity. The garden provided a peaceful sanctuary where thinkers could freely engage in study and contemplation. Giovanni de' Medici, as the villa's patron, was a sophisticated humanist who valued scholarship and the arts. His choice of Fiesole, away from the bustle of Florence, for this villa underscored its purpose as a retreat for intellectual exploration. The garden became an outdoor extension of the villa's scholarly atmosphere, a place where ideas could flourish amidst natural beauty. The integration of the garden, with the sloping terrain, making the most of the difficult site, also symbolized the humanist ability to overcome challenges through ingenuity and intellect. Even the choice of plant material held meaning. Groves of cypress and olive trees, native to the Tuscan landscape, provided shade and a sense of timelessness. These trees, symbols of longevity and peace, integrated the garden seamlessly with its natural surroundings, further emphasizing the harmonious relationship between human design and the natural world. The simple, elegant plantings allowed the beauty of the landscape and the architectural purity of the villa to take center stage. The Villa Medici di Fiesole, therefore, stands as a testament to the early Medici's refined tastes and their deep engagement with humanism and intellectual pursuits. Its garden was not a flamboyant display of wealth, but a carefully crafted space for contemplation, inspiration, and the celebration of rationality and natural beauty. It was a garden that quietly spoke of the power of ideas, the pursuit of knowledge, and the harmonious integration of humanity with the sublime landscapes of Tuscany, all under the patronage of the discerning Medici family. Number 8. Villa di Careggi. The Villa di Careggi, located just north of Florence, holds a special place in Medici history and within the lineage of their gardens. While its current garden layout owes much to later interventions, particularly in the 19th century, its origins in the 15th century under Cosimo the Elder mark it as a crucible of early Medici intellectual and philosophical ambition. Careggi was not just a residence, it was the spiritual and intellectual heart of the Florentine Neoplatonic Academy, making its surrounding landscape a silent echo of profound philosophical concepts. Under Cosimo the Elder, Careggi became the favored retreat for renowned thinkers like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola. The villa's atmosphere fostered deep intellectual discussions on classical philosophy, particularly the works of Plato and Plotinus. The garden, even in its simpler 15th century form, was designed to facilitate contemplation and dialogue rather than grand display. It was a space where the pursuit of divine truth and cosmic harmony found a tangible, earthly setting. The original gardens of Careggi would have been characterized by formal parterres laid out in geometric patterns, reflecting the Renaissance belief in order and rationality. These patterns, mirroring the perceived harmony of the cosmos, were not merely decorative. They served as visual metaphors for the underlying mathematical structure of the universe, a key tenet of Neoplatonic thought that sought to reconcile classical philosophy with Christian theology. The very arrangement of the garden pathways and beds encouraged a structured intellectual journey. There were water features, though perhaps not as monumental as later Medici fountains, would have been present, likely in the form of simple pools or fountains. Water, in Neoplatonic thought, symbolized purification, the flow of divine emanation, and the source of life. A tranquil pool at Careggi would have served as a mirror for both the sky and the human soul, inviting introspection and a connection to higher truths. The gentle sound of moving water would have provided a soothing backdrop for profound philosophical debates. The choice of specific plants in the garden would also have carried subtle meanings. Medicinal herbs, fragrant flowers, and carefully cultivated trees could represent health, purity, and the beauty of creation. The enclosed nature of the garden, a private sanctuary, reinforced its role as a place for intellectual retreat, away from the distractions of the city. This controlled environment was ideal for focused study and meditation, allowing the mind to ascend towards philosophical enlightenment. One of the most significant, though invisible, meanings of Careggi's garden was its direct association with the Neoplatonic Academy. The very air of the garden was imbued with the ideas discussed within the villa's walls. The Academy sought to bridge the gap between human intellect and divine wisdom, a journey often symbolized by the progression from earthly beauty to a higher, more abstract form of beauty. The garden, with its natural and cultivated forms, provided a stepping stone on this symbolic ascent. The relationship between microcosm and macrocosm, a central tenet of Neoplatonism, was subtly reflected in the garden's design. The garden, as a small, ordered world, was understood to be a reflection of the larger, divine order of the universe. By creating a harmonious miniature cosmos within their garden, the Medici, through their patronage, were seen to be participating in and upholding the divine order on earth. This was a powerful statement of their philosophical alignment and their perception of their role as enlightened rulers. Even the acts of cultivation and growth within the garden could be interpreted philosophically. The nurturing of plants, the cycle of seasons, and the renewal of life mirrored the Neoplatonic concept of emanation and return, the process by which all things flow from the one and seek to return to it. The garden was a living illustration of these abstract concepts, making them tangible and accessible to the learned individuals who frequented Careggi. While the visible elements of the garden might seem modest compared to the later imperial displays, the true hidden meaning of the Villa di Careggi garden lay in its profound intellectual and spiritual purpose. It was a place where the Medici, through their patronage, created an environment uniquely suited for the highest forms of human thought. The garden was not merely a backdrop, it was an integral part of the intellectual journey, a contemplative space that fostered the philosophical inquiries that shaped the very intellectual fabric of the Renaissance. It represented the Medici's power, not just over land and people, but over ideas and the human spirit itself. Number 9, Giardino di San Marco. The Giardino di San Marco, located in Florence near the convent of San Marco, was not a grand ducal villa garden in the traditional sense, but its significance to the Medici and its profound hidden meanings place it firmly among their most influential green spaces. Established by Lorenzo the Magnificent in the late 15th century, it was less a garden for leisure and more an outdoor academy, a living museum, and a crucible for the artistic and intellectual genius that defined the High Renaissance. This garden was where the Medici truly cultivated talent and ideas. The Giardino di San Marco was initially a sculpture garden filled with ancient Roman and Greek antiquities that Lorenzo had collected. These classical statues were not merely decorative pieces, they were subjects of study. Lorenzo invited young aspiring artists, including the young Michelangelo, to live and work within or near the garden, providing them with access to these ancient masterpieces. This was an unprecedented act of artistic patronage and instruction, making the garden a unique laboratory for artistic development. The garden's layout, while perhaps simpler than later, more elaborate designs, was structured to facilitate study and contemplation. Pathways would have allowed artists to move around the sculptures, sketching and analyzing them from various angles. Trees and plants would have provided shade and a natural setting for these artistic endeavors, creating an inspiring environment for creativity. The combination of ancient art and living nature offered a unique blend of inspiration. The hidden meaning of San Marco's garden lay in its purpose as an incubator of genius. By providing these young artists with direct access to classical models and fostering a community of learners under the guidance of sculptors like Bertoldo di Giovanni, Lorenzo was actively shaping the future of Florentine art. The garden became a symbol of Medici foresight and their deep understanding that artistic excellence could be cultivated, much like a precious plant. The art produced here, infused with classical ideals, would elevate Florence to the pinnacle of the art world. The presence of ancient sculptures within a garden setting also carried broader symbolic weight. The revival of classical antiquity was a cornerstone of the Renaissance, and Lorenzo's collection at San Marco was a tangible manifestation of this ideal. The garden became a direct link to the glories of Rome and Greece, reminding the artists and scholars of the timeless beauty and wisdom of the past. It suggested that under Medici patronage, these ancient virtues could be reborn in a new golden age. Furthermore, the garden was a place where Neoplatonic philosophical ideas, so dear to Lorenzo, could be discussed and integrated into artistic practice. The harmonious forms of classical sculpture were seen as embodying ideal beauty, a reflection of divine order. Artists studying these forms were not just learning technique, they were absorbing a philosophical worldview that linked earthly beauty to celestial perfection. The garden, filled with these idealized forms, became a silent classroom for this profound philosophy. The Giardino di San Marco was also a private yet impactful space for Lorenzo himself. It was a place where he could interact directly with the artists and intellectuals he supported, fostering personal relationships that underpinned his patronage. This intimate setting allowed for a free exchange of ideas and a deeper understanding of artistic processes, strengthening the bond between patron and artist. The garden became a personal sanctuary where Lorenzo's vision for the future of art took root. The significance of the garden extended beyond sculpture. It was a place where drawing from nature was encouraged, combining the study of classical art with direct observation of the living world. This holistic approach to artistic education, blending the ideal with the real, contributed to the distinctive naturalism and humanism of Renaissance art. The garden therefore fostered a balanced understanding of both ancient wisdom and the living world. In its modest scale, the Giardino di San Marco embodied a profound Medici strategy, investing in human potential and intellectual capital. It was a powerful statement that true wealth lay not just in material possessions, but in the cultivation of genius and the patronage of ideas. The garden became a symbol of the Medici's role as cultural architects, shaping not just landscapes, but the very course of artistic and intellectual history. It was a place where seeds of creativity were planted, destined to blossom into masterpieces that would define an era.